Greetings one and all. I've been discussing with a friend all about morality and shamefulness. We were discussing some of the things we were seeing going on various music videos, because we were having dinner in a pub that had big TV screens full of videos playing of, must have been to the music channels or something. And neither of us are really up to date with the music of today. But I do remember videos were getting more and more shocking when I did last watch videos. But the ones we were watching recently of, I suppose, the up-and-coming pop stars, gave us a bit of a feeling of shame, organic shame, as Mr. Gurdjieff would say, and wondering where their morals were. There seems to be a distinct lack of shame these days and morals in certain media things that we watch going on. I did notice that TV shows, as many of you have over the last, 15 years or whatever, some of them were really, all these dramas were turning into soft porn on your 9 o'clock TV drama. What springs to mind is that vampire one that I used to watch. True Blood. That was soft porn, with a little story around it. Anyway, being judgmental, that's what we were, sitting there eating our lunch and gagging over what some of these videos were doing. So we decided to look up, because we've been reading a bit of Gurdjieff. We had Beelzebub's Tales with us. What he has to say about morality and shamefulness, and it was quite amazing. He talks on page 424 about organic shame, which seems to result with what's going on today. Although organic self-shame, proper to free-brain beings, has gradually and entirely disappeared from their presences, nevertheless there has arisen in its place this pseudo-being impulse which arises in their presences only when they do something which under their abnormally established conditions of ordinary being existence is not acceptable to be done before others. And we happened to read that them few pages that this paragraph was on, and we was thinking, as we were looking around the pub that was a family pub doing lunches, there were all these little teeny weeny kids there watching all these pop stars doing their erotic moves and skimpy clothes and such like. I sound a bit like a Mary Whitehouse. But we were wondering what kind of impression that would be having on these little young kids. And of course this is something that is discussed and has been for many years, what has happened to morality. That we have to agree with what Mr. Gurdjieff was saying, that people's moral shame has disappeared from them, or their organic self-shame has gone. Nobody seems to have any concern as to what they are doing or why they are doing it, and it's all for titillation, of course, and to make big bucks. I know for decades there's been in the newspapers, they like all their titillation stories and talk about how everybody's, doing this with that person and doing that with another, and then there'll be all the scantily clad photo shoots, all for titillation, which Mullah Nasir ad-Din talks about a lot in All and Everything, and all these titillators that are everywhere. Mullah Nasir ad-Din talks about how happy is that father whose son is even busy with murder and robbery, for he himself will then have no time to get accustomed to occupy himself with titillation. Well, I kind of feel that murder, robbery and titillation all go together these days. It all seems to be very unbecoming. And Gurdjieff goes on to talk about that later in his book, about unbecoming and how everyone's becoming unworthy through this unbecoming and this titillation. Nothing shocks many people anymore, does it? And we need a shock to our system, obviously, to help us get into the work, but maybe not this kind of shock. Unless it's something you find yourself doing. I wonder how many people go through some kind of impulse of shame that then brings them perhaps to the work or to an awakening of some kind. He also talks about instinctive shame, the being impulse that maintains morals and objective morality, which is what's really on trial here, doesn't it? It feels like morality is on trial. What is moral? What's moral for one person is not for another. But Gurdjieff talks about morality being that fundamental being impulse, which is the main lever of objective morality, and which is called organic shame. And that there's an impulse of instinctive shame, the being impulse that maintains morals and objective morality. So it feels like all that's been going out the window over the last, God knows how many years. As a teenager, I felt that everyone should be free to do what they want, but I now realise a lot of people are coerced into doing things, coerced into making big bucks, coerced into doing things to be noticed. Everyone, what's it, Andy Warhol said, that everyone will get their 15 minutes of fame. Do I want 15 minutes of fame, or would I rather just wake up and hopefully develop myself into a better type of human being? People make excuses for their shameful behaviour, but I wonder what's going on deep inside themselves. Again, this all comes down to conscience and whether they're ignoring it or listening to it, and whether they're giving excuses or trying to give a reason for why they act this way. This comes back to Gurdjieff's definition of all the different types of reasons and reasonings that we have. And we're trying to work with our reason with a capital R, a reason that is of a higher I'm losing my word, higher impulse than gradations of reason. That's what he talks about. Many people seem to have a total absence of any reason, he says. And every being, according to its nature and to the gradation of its reason, attained by its ancestors and transmitted by heredity, occupies its definite place among beings of other forms. Now, we all get our different reason at the beginning from our ancestors and transmitted by heredity. But I hope that as a child or as a teenager, even later on in life, you start questioning things and start realizing that there's objective reason, different kinds of reason, that another person's reason may not really be ringing true for you, because it might be their reasoning may be something that is helping that person along rather than helping you along. And Gurdjieff talks about your reason of your being only works when all your separate centres are all working together. That's when you're working with objective being reason. But most people are just working with reason with a little r. He talks about different processes and impulses that help you to perfect your objective reason. And it's quite weird when you start using your objective reason or your objective being reason, you start seeing how other people are being unreasonable a lot of the time. They're using perhaps automated reason instead of a working reason. He has so many different names for reason. I was looking through the index. Things like higher reason, impartial reason, individual reason, manifestation of reason. But that's manifestation of reason, hopefully of objective reason, the merits of reason, the mechanical reason, the miserable reason, the normal reason. And also, of course, the absence of reason, which a lot of people seem to have, an absence of reason. But he's trying to help us to require a more purified reason and to connect with the sacred reason from the divine. He talks also about how reason is a sacred impulse if you attune to it properly and use the higher reason. He wants you to perfect yourself in reason. he talks about how, where is it? Blah, blah, blah. Page 1148. Perfected up to the required gradation of the sacred measure of reason. We all need a bit of reason in our life, but not this automatic reason. We definitely need impartial reason. Impartiality is an important part of the Gurdjieff work. And I want to read this quote from page 200. So this is to do with, when you're encountering another person. If by his reason a being is higher than you, you must always bow down before him and try to imitate him in everything. But if he is lower than you, you must be just towards him, because you once occupied the same place according to the sacred measure of the gradation of reason of our Creator and all-maintainer. And that all-maintainer is known as Ahu Nilo, the Assistant Chief Investigator of the whole universe in respect of the details of objective morality. And that's what we're trying to attain towards, the objective morality, which does touch the nerves of a few people, because people don't want to be objective. Most people are subjective. And of course, most people think they are living a normal life. They are living in normality. When we know through doing the Gurdjieff work, the way the world is operating, it is not normal. It is subnormal. Or as Gurdjieff would call it, we're all living in a lunatic asylum. And we don't want to be the lunatics. We want to be the ones that get out of that asylum. But we can't get out of it. We just have to navigate our way through it, because we cannot leave this planet Earth unless you can figure out how to build a spaceship and navigate your way off this planet and through the universe to another lovely planet. I'll be up for that. Please put me on board. And I've always found it interesting that the spaceship, the trans spaceship that Beelzebub flew on, was called the Karnak with a K. And Karnak is also a place in Egypt, for those that don't look at ancient Egyptology. A place very worthy of visiting, a beautiful temple. Been there for thousands and thousands of years. Many pharaohs have been there, and obviously priests and priestesses. I had a wonderful time there when I went, and I fell in love with the gorgeous Sekhmet statue that's in the Sekhmet chapel that's in this wonderful temple. But for many of you, you've probably come across Schwaller de Lubitz, who is the person who was one of the first to state that the Sphinx had once been in a rain place, like a place that had rain, heavy rainfall on it. So this, and was saying that the Sphinx was much older than it actually is, and this is something John Anthony West took on as well. But he also, Schwaller de Lubitz, wrote the books The Temple of Man, all about how Karnak was designed in such a way that when you traversed through the temple, you start off at what would be, well, when I went, obviously it's all in ruins, but there are parts of it still there, and it is magnificent to visit. It's just amazing how large it is, and how, well, there is a sacred feeling still there. I didn't take my dowsing rods in those days, but I wish I had, so that I could have seen what kind of ley lines there were there. But Schwaller de Lubitz talks about how Karnak was set out to represent man, and that really you're walking through a temple that is designed in the figure of man. And you enter by the feet to make your way up through the body, and the Holy of Holies, I want to say it's the heart, but I have a feeling it's in the head area. But it is a very interesting study for those that would perhaps like to look further into that. Obviously, Gurdjieff seems to be very connected to the Egyptian style of old, and with many ancient religions, faiths, and the ancient wisdom of the esoteric. And if I remember rightly, Gurdjieff based the Society of Akodan in Egypt. I'm pretty sure of that. I might have to just go through the book again and check, but I'm sure it was. And of course, Akodan was the society that was striving to become aware of the sense and aim of the being of beings, of God, and what our, or the individual's position was on this planet, in this universe, and part of the divine workings. They were trying to develop their genuine objective reason, back again to reason. And I think also they were looking at all different kinds of ways of discovering who they really were, discovering their role in life through science and art and dance and such like. I might need to go and reread that chapter. Gurdjieff writes about a lot of sacred people, people that attained a certain holiness, such as Buddha, who he calls Saint Buddha in his book. And he writes, Saint Buddha had told them also that in general, the free-centered beings existing on various planets of our great universe, and of course the free-centered beings of the earth also, were nothing else but part of that most great greatness, which is the all-embracing of all that exists, and that the foundation of this most great greatness is there above, for the convenience of the embracing of the essence of everything existing. We are here to be part of that great greatness, but we have to develop ourselves as well so that we can become great greatness. And me and my friend at dinner were discussing how sometimes this can irk people, and it made me just quite sad that people don't want to develop themselves, don't want to further themselves in becoming attuned to the universe, let's say, and other such things. You know, the divine source is out there and wants us all to find happiness in ourselves, and genuine happiness at that as well. And that brings me back to the videos, all these videos we were watching of the pop stars being so happy with their song. It must feel great to be able to sing a song that many, many millions of people are listening to and singing along to, and giving them, that person that's listening to it, some kind of emotional drive. But Mullah Nasir ad-Din says, the very greatest happiness, the very greatest happiness consists in obtaining the pleasurable with the profitable. And that seems to be what's going on in our modern world today. But I hope you can find happiness in your work as you carry along. I know it can be hard work sometimes, but we do need to try and stay on a happy vibe, but not a fake happy vibe. We need to be genuinely happy, genuinely working, genuinely looking at ourselves, just being genuine, really. And that can be quite difficult for us. We don't really want to look at us with a genuine eye, but we do have to. Because when we start doing that, we start to see what is real and what is not real. What is real in ourselves, or whether we're being all automaton, mechanical. We need to recognize what is real in us so that we can become the real person that we want to be. You know, like what Gurdjieff says as the title of his last book, life is real only then when I am. Many people live in fantasy. I know I did when I was younger. And many of us perceive fantasy as a reality, but that's all part of that naughty kundabuffer left over in us. We need to have what Gurdjieff would call an instinctive sensing of reality, so that we can see and or sense reality and not the fake fantasy life that this lunatic asylum is. And he talks about how the law of vibrations is the most important branch of scientific knowledge and gives the possibility, though approximately, of recognizing reality. So doing the work is a bit of scientific work upon oneself. And I wish us all well with it, and that we can all wake up and see what's really going on, and be the real people we want to be. Because, as Gurdjieff says, it has become quite proper to their nature, talking about humans, to see only unreality. We want to be real people. Stay real, everyone. Thank you for listening. Peace and love to one and all.